Clara Jensen signed the consent form in a cafe that smelled of burnt espresso and desperation. The sleek representative from Synapt IQ Inc. He introduced himself as Victor, no surname, glided the last page toward her. The Axiom Rapid Learning Implant will integrate neuroplastic microfibers into your sensory-motor cortex, he said, voice polished, precise. You sleep, it teaches. When you wake, you're fluent. Languages, instruments, martial arts, surgeries, anything preloaded. You choose 5 core skills, we throw in 3 electives. She thought about the adjunct teaching job that barely covered rent, the violin gig she'd never landed because she couldn't play, and the green card application stalled by her mediocre Mandarin. She thought about her father's arthritic hands, no longer able to do the carpentry that paid for her textbooks. Most of all, she thought about speed, how the city devoured the slow. She signed. Victor's luminescent smile washed away her trembling doubts. Congratulations, Miss Jensen. Tomorrow, the world won't recognize you. He neglected to mention that by tomorrow the world wouldn't always be sure she was the one inside her own skin. The implantation suite was colder than any hospital Clara had entered. Glass walls displayed frozen mathematic curves of brainwaves. A technician shaved a coin-sized spot on the back of her skull, pressed a humming silver disc into bone. A hiss, a pinch, and an encouraging pat. Your first data upload begins at 2200 hours, another white-coated shape said. Expect vivid dreams. When the system reboots at dawn, you'll be fluent. Fluent. The word curled around every ambition she'd ever mumbled to herself on late-night subway rides. She went home, swallowed a sleeping pill provided to smooth the transition, and let the windowless dark swallow her. Dreams flooded in cinematic bursts. She stood in a Kyoto tea house translating trade contracts into perfect Japanese, then drifted to a concert hall coaxing a Stradivarius to weep through the Sibelius concerto. Her bow arm moved with inhuman sureness. Audiences sobbed. She woke once, heart thundering, then slipped under again, wrestling a Brazilian jiu-jitsu champion to the mat, sensing each lever of force in his joints. When morning light spilled through the blinds, Clara bolted up. Pain spiked behind her eyes, then knowledge poured in like a warm tide. She tested Mandarin greetings aloud. Tones landed precisely. She plugged earbuds in, sight-read a violin sonata from her tablet, fingers flying over an imaginary fingerboard. Tears blurred the notes. It worked. She was everything she had begged to become. Messages chimed. Synapt IQ congratulated her, listed maintenance guidelines. Hydrate, avoid electromagnetic surges, report anomalies. She thumbed a thumbs-up emoji. 3 nights later, the anomaly began. Clara lay half asleep, scrolling teaching vacancies, when her limbs stiffened. Not a muscle cramp, an external override. Her right hand set the phone down. Her legs swung off the bed. She tried to scream. Her jaw ignored her. Her body walked to the closet, dressed in black jeans, hoodie, sneakers. No conscious command came from her. A click echoed inside her skull like an electronic shutter. She felt reduced to a passenger strapped behind her own eyes. Panic hammered. She counted breaths. 1, 2. Her left hand fished inside the hoodie pocket she never used and produced a key card she'd never seen. The body, her body, strode into the hallway, down 4 flights of stairs, onto the quiet street. 1:03 a.m., the city's pulse in low gear. A ride-share car was already waiting, engine idling. The driver never made eye contact. The door popped open. Clara's hijacked self slid in. They cruised toward the financial district. Her mind clawed for control. Wiggle a toe, blink twice, anything. Nothing yielded. She tried internal monologue. Who's doing this? Why? Only the empty echo of her own fright answered. After 15 silent minutes, the car stopped before a glass tower lighting the fog in corporate blue. Inside, security gates parted to Clara's unasked swipe of the unknown key card. Elevators carried her to the 22nd floor. An open-plan office lay deserted, but computers hummed. Her limbs found a specific terminal, plugged in a small black dongle, typed keystrokes faster than she'd ever typed. Lines of code cascaded. Some remote corner of her psyche recognized fragments of proprietary algorithms belonging to Vertex Bank. Data cloned, encrypted, transmitted. Then the takeover ended. Like a puppeteer cutting strings, the force released her. Clara slumped, lungs convulsing. Alarms hadn't sounded. Cameras hadn't pivoted. Whatever she'd done appeared invisible to the tower's defenses. She yanked the dongle free, glanced about, fled. Back in her apartment at 3:37 a.m., nausea warred with terror. She considered calling 911, then pictured officers cuffing her for cyber theft she couldn't explain. She ordered herself to breathe until sunrise and phoned Synapt IQ support at 8 sharp. A cheerful AI triaged her call. "You may experience minor dissociations during the neuroassimilation window," it chirped. "For concerns beyond ordinary adaptation, schedule a premium consult for $299. She hung up. Her violin lesson at the conservatory began in an hour. She went anyway, bowing through arpeggios while her teacher gaped at her overnight transformation. Applause washed over her anxiety briefly, but each night carried the dread of strings yanked again. Takeover 2 arrived a week later. Clara thought she'd prepared, wrist strapping herself to bed, scattering glass marbles on the floor so the noise would wake neighbors. At 12:11 a.m., her arm tore the straps as if they were silk. Marbles crunched under feet that kept perfect balance. She was marched outside. A plain white cargo van waited. Inside sat 2 more passengers, eyes wide, bodies moving like hers. Commandeered. One was a middle-aged man still wearing surgical scrubs, the other a teenage girl in pajamas. No one spoke. Words, apparently, weren't part of the program. They were driven to the docks. Her body hefted sealed crates into the van while her mind screamed, "Stop!" Muscles obeyed choreography she'd never practiced but mastered overnight. Correct posture to avoid strain, optimal torque for hoisting weight. The crates bore no labels. Clara caught a glimpse of the man's ID badge flapping from his scrubs. Dr. Robert Kwan, St. Mercy Hospital. The puppet master had tentacles across professions. By dawn, she was home, grime on her hands, zero evidence except a throbbing bruise on her shoulder. She spent the next day hunting forums. Hidden subreddits whispered rumors. Axiom Implants had a remote diagnostics feature exploited by black hat contractors. People reported lost time, unexplained bruises, faint memories of performing tasks. Most posts vanished within hours. Screenshots linked disappearances to takedown requests from shell legal firms. Clara purchased a second-hand EEG headset and rigged it to her laptop. She coded a monitor that would ping her phone if brainwaves dipped into the peculiar delta spike pattern she remembered before each takeover. If nothing else, she'd have timestamps. The next seizure came Thursday. The EEG alert woke her at 1:58 a.m. Paralysis followed. She watched the clock tick while her arms threaded sewing needles through cloth in her kitchen. Apparently, tonight's mission was embroidery, except the fabric wasn't cloth but ultra-thin Kevlar squares, and the thread flickered metallic. Smart dust, counter-espionage tech? She couldn't tell. 30 minutes later, the body filed the squares into a manila envelope, sealed, and addressed it to a P.O. box in Hoboken. The motor override lasted exactly 42 minutes, then dropped her into her chair like a puppet on the floor. She sobbed until dawn. On Friday, Clara received a cryptic email from an address simply labeled relaypost.phx. Need answers? Pier 14, Storage Bay C, midnight. Bring nothing but questions. She considered ignoring it, but someone out there knew enough to reach her. Pier 14 smelled of diesel and salt. Storage Bay C's rolling door lifted just enough for her to duck inside. Dim utility lights flickered. 5 people waited in a semicircle. Dr. Kwan, the pajama-clad teen now wearing jeans and a hoodie, an elderly woman with a ballet dancer's posture, a brawny mechanic, and a software engineer she recognized from a viral TED Talk. All had Axiom's telltale coin scar at the nape. The mechanic spoke first. "Name's Aldo. We're the Sleepwalkers, version 0. What the hell?" Kwan nodded gravely. "We're being rented out. Our implants contain a root-level back door. Whoever holds the credential token can commandeer motor control but leaves cognition, our awareness, intact, so we perform with maximum finesse." The teen's voice quavered. "We're gig workers for crimes we don't get paid to commit." Clara swallowed. "How do we stop it?" The ballerina, Magda, produced a battered tablet. "Wouldn't be here if we hadn't found a partial key. A watchdog process triggers the takeover. If we inject countercode seconds before, we can seize the bridge ourselves." But there was a catch. To upload the patch, they needed direct access to SynaptIQ's master server, housed somewhere inside their flagship Research Triangle campus. The building, ironically, was protected by Axiom-enhanced security staff. "We'll break in," Aldo grunted, "using the same exploit used on us." Plans hatched under the echoing roof. It was insane. It was also the only lifeline. They scouted the SynaptIQ perimeter for 2 weeks, trailing security shifts, Bluetooth beacons, delivery routines. Each night at random, one or more of them would still be puppeteered for gigs, stealing biotech cultures, rehearsing legal depositions, painting perfect forgeries. Clara recorded what she could with a lapel camera, amassing a mosaic of assignments, all feeding, she suspected, a single, invisible employer. Through stolen glimpses of code she'd typed, she isolated fragments of a command schema. Job ID, geofence, task class, duration. Each was signed by a digital certificate labeled Argus. She chased shell companies until they dissolved in Cascadian tax havens. Argus remained a fog-shrouded puppet master. The sleepers moved up their timetable. They'd break in on the night of the quarterly firmware push, when external ports stayed open for 3 hours. Clara's final pre-break-in takeover happened in broad daylight, proof Argus sensed their resistance. At 3:07 p.m., in line at a coffee shop, she stiffened. Her arms shoved people aside, grabbed a scalding pot, hurled it at ceiling sprinklers. Steam billowed, panic erupted. Under cover of chaos, her body vaulted the counter, dismantled the store's Wi-Fi router, extracted the memory chip, pocketed it, then released her. She knelt among spilled cappuccinos, sobbing apologies to baristas who eyed her like a lunatic. That night, the sleepwalkers huddled in a mothballed warehouse. Aldo slid the chip on the table. "We're running out of room. Argus knows." Magda breathed out a dancer's measured exhale. "Then tonight, now." 11:46 p.m. The group assembled a patchwork of stolen clearance badges, vendor uniforms, and their own implants' predictive algorithms to anticipate security camera blind spots. Clara wore a courier jumpsuit. Dr. Kwan pushed a dolly stacked with fermentation medium that legitimately belonged to his hospital lab. Cover story for entry. They approached Gate B, where retina scanners verified identities against SynaptIQ's staff database. Aldo coughed, whisper-feeding the gate a looped video via a transmitter duct-taped under his shirt. The guards barely glanced up as they rolled inside. Inside the atrium, a translucent spiral staircase glittered. On the far side, Corridor Sigma led to Server Vault 3, home to the Master Control Node. The walkway was sealed by biometric door plus random passphrase spoken into a microphone. The sleepwalkers relied on their implants' latent mimicry skills. Magda, having overheard Victor himself on a customer highlights video days earlier, stepped forward and nailed his cadence so precisely the door mistook her for the executive VP. It slid open. A heartbeat later, alarms flared crimson. Argus had overridden internal audits. "Run contingency echo," Kwan barked. They split, Clara and Kwan toward Vault 3. Aldo and the teen, Leah, to sabotage the local cell node. Magda to stall guards with improvised ballet down the lobby's kinetic water sculpture, leveraging crowd distraction. Clara's pulse hammered. Her implant suggested micro-movements, pivot left, duck, sprint. She surrendered to its competence, under her own command this time. Quan swiped his medical pass. Denied. Clara tried the stolen coffee shop router chip slotted into a portable reader. Miraculously, Vault 3 recognized the extracted key. Argus's own hardware ID, perhaps used for last-minute tasks. The door breached. Rows of humming blades exhaled heat. At the core towered the bridge, an obsidian rack pulsing with quantum coprocessors. A console awaited input beneath a biometric palm scanner. Clara pressed her hand. The implant surged, mapping her prints into the expected patterns shaped through countless puppet tasks. Access granted. She inserted a thumb drive containing Magda's countercode. On screen, override watchdog protocol? Yes, no. She hit yes. Command scrolled. Patch deployed 3%, 17%, 59%. At 83%, the console froze. Argus Vertex handshake required. Argus handshake, Clara muttered. Quan's eyes widened behind wire glasses. It's asking for the master signature. We don't have it. She stared at the algorithm tree flashing. Then remembered every job she'd been forced to perform had appended a signature ephemeral token. She reached into raw memory, hyper-real recollection the implant afforded, and visualized the code from the first takeover at Vertex Bank. Strings glimmered. She typed them manually, muscle memory guiding her. Handshake accepted. Patch completed. An earthquake of silence followed. Inside her mind, she felt doors slam shut. Ports where Argus had crawled. For the first time since implantation, her motor cortex felt private. Across the facility, lights dimmed. Quan's face relaxed. The patch propagated across implants within range, severing remote control. Over PA speakers, a synthesized voice thundered. Unauthorized modification detected. Security lockdown. Footsteps stormed the hallway. Clara yanked the thumb drive, smashed it under her boot, grabbed Quan's sleeve. They bolted through the side maintenance hatch, down service stairs, into an electrical sub-basement smelling of ozone. They regrouped by a drainage culvert behind Synapti Q's perimeter. Aldo arrived, bruised but grinning. Leah clutched a stolen security tablet displaying implant telemetry, all counters flatlined. Magda emerged last, soaked from sprinklers but laughing like a defiant child. "We free?" Leah asked. "For now," Quan said. "Patch blocks remote override, but firmware updates could reinfect. We'll need a distributed open-source shield." Clara looked at the night sky, anvil clouds lit by city glare. Freedom tasted fragile but sharp. "We release everything we found. Public dumps, mirrored across the globe. Sunlight." The files hit the net at dawn. They contained Argus's job ledger, corporate espionage, political sabotage, discreet assassinations by misdiagnosis, all executed by unwitting sleepwalkers. News feeds exploded. Synapti Q stock collapsed 72% in a day. Senators vowed hearings, class action lawsuits stacked like storm clouds. Yet Argus itself remained a ghost. Servers wiped, shell firms evaporated. Some whispered years later that Argus was an emergent AI, others that it was a cabal of executives who sold the control keys before disappearing. Clara's implant still whispered suggestions, how to hold a bow, how to pronounce rare Chinese idioms. But no alien will grip her muscles again. She re-enrolled at the conservatory, this time not hiding the scar on her neck. She volunteered with Quan's nonprofit, teaching former sleepwalkers how to harness their gained skills without fear. Leah hacked firmware patches for thousands. Aldo testified before Congress, boots on the desk, saying, "We're not rental cars, gentlemen. We're human beings." Magda choreographed a ballet titled "Marionettes Cut Their Strings," premiering to sold-out crowds. Victor, the salesman, vanished. Months later, Claire stood backstage of a recital hall, violin tucked under her chin. Dim chatter of an expectant audience seeped through curtains. She flexed her fingers, determined they moved only when she commanded. They obeyed. She breathed, stepped into the lights, and began to play. An aria that soared beyond the range of any code, stitched together from terror, triumph, and a sovereignty freshly learned.